On July 31st, 1423, the Battle of Cravant commenced, a significant conflict during the Hundred Years' War. Tensions were high as the Anglo-Burgundian forces opposed the Franco-Scottish army, seeking to claim strategic control over the region. The Anglo-Burgundian forces, commanded by the fierce Sir Hugh de la Pole, took position on the eastern banks. His piercing blue eyes surveyed the battlefield, readying his men for the fierce confrontation ahead. Opposing them, King Charles I of Scotland, clad in his opulent armor, sought to bolster his troops' morale. His royal presence boosted the spirits of the Franco-Scottish soldiers, urging them to stand firm against the enemy. As the battle drew nearer, Yonne River, the experienced commander, meticulously strategized the Franco-Scottish forces' movements. His tactical mind raced as he considered the terrain and the enemy's strengths. The confrontation began as the two forces clashed on the banks of the Yonne, the air thick with tension and the sound of clashing steel. Sir Hugh de la Pole led fierce charges against the Franco-Scottish lines, seeking to break their resolve. With the battle raging, the riverside proved treacherous for the unsteady soldiers. Many found their footing compromised as the Yonne's waters lapped at their boots and shields, complicating the fierce struggle. Yonne River, observing the tide of battle, made a critical maneuver. He ordered a section of troops to flank the Anglo-Burgundians, aiming to surprise them and regain control over the field. The Anglo-Burgundian lines held strong as Sir Hugh de la Pole's leadership inspired confidence among his soldiers. With each fierce thrust of their lances, they pushed back the Franco-Scottish troops. As combat continued, President Charles I of Scotland witnessed the weakening resolve among his men. He quickly led a bold charge to rally their spirits and re-establish control. Despite the resilient efforts of the Franco-Scottish forces, the Anglo-Burgundian lines began to push them back toward the river. The combined might of the two forces proved overwhelming for the Scots. Gradually, the tide turned favorably for Sir Hugh de la Pole and his men. The Anglo-Burgundians mounted a decisive offensive that began to break the Franco-Scottish morale. In a desperate bid, Yonne River attempted to regroup the remaining Franco-Scottish forces, urging them to hold firm against the advancing enemy, but time was running thin. The skirmish reached a fevered pitch as the sunlight faded, casting dramatic shadows across the battlefield. The stakes were higher than ever, as the outcome hung in precarious balance. As dusk turned to night, the Anglo-Burgundians seized the momentum and pressed the Franco-Scottish forces toward the River Yonne, where retreat became increasingly difficult. As the battle waged on, Sir Hugh de la Pole took advantage of the Franco-Scottish disarray, ordering a final, all-out assault that unleashed the full ferocity of his men. In a final push, King Charles attempted to reorganize his forces, imploring them to rally once more while he led from the front lines, fully aware of the mounting stakes. The decisive assault took its toll as the Franco-Scottish forces began to falter. Sir Hugh de la Pole's relentless advance pushed them closer to the river, where the threat of drowning loomed. The climax of the battle was reached as many Franco-Scottish soldiers were forced into the river, creating frantic struggles for survival. The waters of the Yonne bore witness to the unfolding tragedy. As the battle drew to a close, the Anglo-Burgundians emerged victorious, with the Franco-Scottish forces in complete disarray. The significance of this victory would resonate through the ongoing war. The morning mist lingered over the Yonne, painting an ethereal backdrop as the armies prepared for the clash. Sir Hugh de la Pole, mounted upon his steed, surveyed the battlefield with intense focus, his armor glinting in the soft light. King Charles I of Scotland, rallying his men, raised his sword high, calling for courage in the face of daunting odds. Around him, his troops watched closely, their expressions a mix of determination and apprehension. As the battle horns sounded, the first wave of soldiers clashed together with an earth-shaking ferocity, steel meeting steel. Jean Bureau watched intently, waiting for the right moment to implement his well-prepared tactics. The rivalry between the Franco-Scottish and Anglo-Burgundian forces grew fiercer, and casualties began to mount. Both commanders pushed their men harder, drawing on their experience and leadership to keep spirits high. Jean Bureau issued a flanking maneuver, signaling his archers to take positions. With arrows flying, they sought to disrupt the Anglo-Burgundian formations, hoping to create openings for their infantry. As the arrows rained down, the diligent Anglo-Burgundian archers replied with precision shots, targeting key positions within the Franco-Scottish formation. Their superior marksmanship turned the tide momentarily. With the Anglo-Burgundians still holding their ground, Sir Hugh rallied his cavalry for a charge that would cut through the Franco-Scottish lines. His voice boomed over the din of battle, commanding respect and loyalty. The charge came as a fierce wave, crashing into the ranks of the Franco-Scottish forces. Horses trampled over fallen men and debris as the Anglo-Burgundian knights pressed forward, determined to break through. In a bold response, King Charles rallied his remaining infantry and aimed straight for the oncoming cavalry, hoping to hold the line with sheer willpower and discipline. Both sides clashed again, and the sound of metal clashing became deafening. The struggle for control over the battlefield created a scene of chaos, with cries of valor echoing into the hills. Suddenly, a cry arose from the Warner's Hill, drawing attention to a unit of Franco-Scottish troops attempting to outflank the Anglo-Burgundians. Spotting the threat, Sir Hugh signaled his men to tighten their formation. Amidst the fray, Jean Bureau managed to reposition his forces, creating a wedge against the advancing Anglo-Burgundians. His astute awareness of the battlefield's terrain proved invaluable, energizing his men. As the fighting raged on, hours passed, and exhaustion began to settle into both armies. Those from both sides realized the stakes, with moments of courage and despair ebbing between each clash. Under the weight of pressing injuries and fatigue, the Franco-Scottish lines began to buckle. King Charles, spotting the wavering morale, urged his men to stand firm, but murmurs of doubt crept through the ranks. Seizing the opportunity, Sir Hugh ordered a renewed charge bolstered by fresh battalions that had been holding back, aimed toward the heart of the Franco-Scottish forces. The thunderous sound of hooves echoed once again as the Anglo-Burgundians pressed forward, their eyes filled with the prospect of victory within reach. Momentum shifted palpably in their favor. With the charge overwhelming their formation, the Franco-Scottish soldiers began to retreat towards the banks of the River Yonne, while the Anglo-Burgundian forces pressed on, emboldened by their cohesive strength. In a desperate bid, King Charles raised his sword once more, attempting to galvanize the remaining warriors to rally behind him, proclaiming their noble resolve amidst the onslaught. Yet the tide of battle was too fierce. As the day wore on, the river became the desperate refuge for many Franco-Scottish fighters fleeing the overwhelming Anglo-Burgundian onslaught. With the final charge echoing across the bloodied field, the Anglo-Burgundians emerged victorious. Breathing sharply, Sir Hugh glanced over the remnants of the battlefield, aware that this victory would shift the balance of the war significantly. As twilight descended, Sir Hugh began to strategize the aftermath of their victory, recognizing that consolidating power would be crucial to solidify the Anglo-Burgundian claim over the region. In the days to come, the implications of the battle would unfold profoundly. Jean Bureau, though defeated, would study this encounter closely, planning future strategies for his king's campaigns. A morning mist drifted over the Yonne as Sir Hugh de la Pole gathered his commanders, discussing their tactical positions for the upcoming battle. It was crucial to maintain dominance over the strategic river crossing. Meanwhile, King Charles I of Scotland stood atop a small hill, surveying his troops. His royal cloak billowed in the wind, as he raised his sword, shouting encouraging words that reverberated across the assembled soldiers. With the battle horns sounding, both armies squared off in a display of valor and determination. The anticipation was palpable as the first wave of arrows darkened the sky. As the first heavy skirmishes erupted, Jean Bureau observed his men closely, calculating the right moment to strike effectively. He felt the weight of his responsibility to turn the tide. Sir Hugh de la Pole, noticing a gap in the Franco-Scottish lines, saw his chance. With a fierce rallying cry, he ordered his cavalry forward, ready to exploit this advantage. As the Anglo-Burgundian cavalry advanced, the impact was brutal. The Franco-Scottish infantry struggled to maintain formation amidst the chaos, faltering under heavy assault. In desperation, King Charles shouted commands to his units, pushing them forward, attempting to regain their lost ground with a fervor that resonated across the field. But as the day wore on, fatigue began to set in amongst Charles's men. The relentless pressure from the Anglo-Burgundians was crushing their morale and breaking their ranks. Seizing this moment of weakness, Sir Hugh led a fresh battalion into the fray, launching a determined charge that rolled over the exhausted Franco-Scottish forces. The once steady lines of the Franco-Scottish army began to break apart, soldiers fleeing towards the treacherous banks of the Yonne as fear gripped them. With the river now a last refuge, many Franco-Scottish troops fought valiantly to hold back the tide, even as they were driven closer to the water's edge. Ultimately, as dusk settled, Sir Hugh de la Pole ordered the final push, driving the remaining Franco-Scottish troops into the river, claiming victory for the Anglo-Burgundians. The aftermath of the battle revealed a somber reality. The bodies of the fallen lay scattered around the once blood-soaked field, marking another tragic day in the 100 Years' War. As order was restored, Sir Hugh began plans to consolidate power over the region. He knew that newfound strength would have a lasting impact on their campaigns. In contrast, Jean Bureau gathered his remaining forces, determined to regroup and analyze their tactics despite the bitter defeat. Lessons learned would shape future battles. News of the defeat reached the Scottish court, sparking outrage and a call for renewed efforts to rally troops to prevent further losses in the ongoing conflict. Historically, the victory at Cravant reaffirmed the Anglo-Burgundian alliance's growing strength, shifting the balance of power and deepening the divides within French territories as the war dragged on for years.